Hey y'all, it's Ashley at Bookishrealm. I just realized y'all, like, my locks are getting longer and they look so full and it makes me so happy. Yay. I can't wait till my locks get on Bree's level though, because you know, Bree is what we aspire to be out here in these streets. Hey y'all, it's Ashley at Bookishrealm. Welcome back, or if you're new here, welcome. And as you can see from the title of this video, today I am here to give you some recommendations of some banned books you should check out. If you did not know, this is a Banned Books Week, which is something that takes place in the United States every September. It is hosted by the American Library Association, and it is a week in which we talk about, discuss, inform, and continue to build that knowledge associated with banned and challenged books. There's also a way for us to celebrate those books and those authors. If y'all have not noticed, which if you've been here for any point in time, it's something that I talk about quite often, there has been a significant increase in the amount of book banning and challenging that has been occurring. It's not to say that it hasn't happened before, because as we all know historically, book banning and book challengings have been happening for a very, very long time. But these past couple of years, we've seen an uptick, and a lot of that has to do with the current culture wars that are happening in the United States. And unfortunately, it is disproportionately affecting our youth, especially those who are in secondary schools in rural areas. If you watch that last video that I did, the School Library Journal did a whole analysis of the locations, areas, and age groups that were being predominantly affected by book banning and book challenges, and they found that a lot of those were taking place in rural areas, which is super unfortunate because you have a tendency to have a lack of access already to different things, and so it's just this big complicated situation that is happening. But I am here today to recommend a few books that I have read that have been banned or have been challenged. Some of these you're probably going to be familiar with because they've had some good traction here in the booktube community. Some of them may be a little bit more obscure and people may not be as familiar with them. Some of them I have written reviews for, I've talked about, and others I actually read these before I even really got a traction on booktube. I read some of these before I even started keeping track of my reading, so it's definitely great to be able to talk about these books again. I don't want this video to be too long, so we're going to go ahead and jump in and get started. The first book that I have here should come as no surprise. This is by the one and only Jason Reynolds and Brendan Keeley, and it is All American Boys. Jason Reynolds, I believe, has two works that have been consistently challenged or banned, and that is All American Boys as well as Stamped, the remix edition that he did with Ibram X. Kendi. This one follows two main characters, Rashad, who is telling the story from his perspective of how he goes and visits a convenience store and he drops a bag of chips and someone thinks that he is stealing. A police officer comes in and starts attacking him just because they thought he was stealing a bag of chips, and continuously beats and assaults Rashad to the point that he has to end up in the hospital. We also follow another character by the name of Quinn, who is white, and Quinn is familiar with the officer that comes to the scene because of the fact that it is his best friend's older brother. And so he actually witnesses everything happening, and he refuses to speak out because he feels like everything's been caught on camera. It doesn't really make a difference. I don't need to say anything. But once he realizes that the school becomes a little divisive and what they believed happened and how Rashad was treated, and when words like police brutality start coming around, then Quinn feels like there's a moment in which he probably should stand up and say something. This is one that I read years ago. It's been a while since I've read All American Boys, but I did enjoy it. I remember hearing Jason Reynolds speak about writing this book and how there are some things about it that he may have changed, like going back and looking at it, some plot holes, some things that necessarily doesn't make sense now reading it again in the future. But I think this is definitely one to check out. I know that I believe that this one came out, yeah, this came out in 2015, so this came out before Dear Martin and The Hate You Give and all of that, and so it's just a very fascinating and interesting book. The next one that I have on my list is And Tango Makes Three. This is a picture book about two penguins. This is based on a true story. I believe they are at Central Park Zoo, if I'm not mistaken. It's two male penguins who end up bonding and building a relationship, and they are a couple, and they want to have a baby penguin of their own. And so there is a caretaker there that puts them in a position where they're able to raise and nurture a baby penguin as any other penguin couple. So this is a book that reiterates the fact that queer identities exist not only in humans but also amongst animals, which people don't even realize, nor do people really anticipate. People absolutely hate and Tango makes 3. Like, people cannot stand it. It has been challenged and banned for years since it came out. But if you're interested in a picture book that is based off of a true story and a very heartwarming and beautiful story about penguins, if you're a fan of animals, I definitely recommend checking that one out. The next one that I have on this list is one that a lot of people may be familiar with. This book ends up on the top 10 most banned and challenged books that ALA puts out almost every single year without fail, and that is George, which is now actually titled Melissa by Alex Gino. Alex made the decision to work with Scholastic about changing the title, so now if you go and you look for it, it is only going to be published under Melissa and no longer will be published under George, because Alex felt very strongly about not dead naming the character, because Melissa's dead name is George, and so they felt that it would be in the best interest and respect of the character to change the name of the book to Melissa. So I'm also going to use that name out of respect, and so Melissa focuses on a young girl who is destined to be a part of Charlotte's web. So Melissa really wants to play the role of Charlotte. However, throughout the book, you'll notice that when people look at Melissa, they think of Melissa as a boy named George. And so it is her uphill battle in trying to prove that she is full well and capable of playing the role of Charlotte, and also so that people can understand and respect her identity for once and for all, and that people are not looking at her as a boy but as the girl that she is. It is a very heartwarming and charming story. Alex has written a couple of other books that I'm really interested in reading. I believe they released a young adult book this year as well, so if you're interested, also check out the rest of their bibliography. The next one I have is one that I talk about a lot because of the role that it plays in just young adult as an age category, and that is Speak by Lori Halse Anderson. This was a National Book Award finalist. I always forget like how old this book is. It was published in 1999, and I'm like, okay, like I keep forgetting that this book is technically over 20 years old. I don't know why I feel like it's younger than that, but it is over 20 years old. It focuses on a main character by the name of Melinda, and Melinda goes back to school in the fall, and she is hated by everyone. She is even hated by her ex-best friend, who makes her pretty miserable. And this is someone that she grew up with, that she did a lot with. And the reason why everybody hates her is that she attended a party during the summer and something happens and she ends up calling the cops. Throughout this book, we watch Melinda find her voice and ability to speak up about what exactly happened at that party and what led her to calling the police. It is a beautiful novel. I have read it 2 or 3 times at this point. I plan on rereading it again soon. I already have a bookmark in it, as you can see. There's also a movie adaptation of this, and it's pretty old. It's with Kristen, y'all know the girl who played Bella in Twilight. I always forget her name. Every time I try to talk about her, I forget her name. Well, she plays Melinda in the movie adaptation. I feel like it was like a straight to TV thing. I've only seen it maybe 1 time, but it probably would be interesting to rewatch it now. Probably not the best of the best when it comes to movies, but I think that the book is phenomenal. And this copy, I was able to meet Lori Halse Anderson, I believe maybe in 2017, and so I was able to actually get her to sign a copy of my book, which I love. The next one that I have is one that I just never for the life of me can understand I mean, I don't understand, but it is one that is constantly challenged and banned, and it is Sex is a Funny Word. This is a puberty book, I believe, for kids around the ages of like 8 to 12, and it goes beyond just the birds and the bees. It's a book that really explores consent and being comfortable with your sexuality and your body, and it is a good starting place for parents who are dealing with kids, because within that age bracket you're looking at kids who are starting to hit puberty, and so it's a good place for parents to start reading and having those conversations and really going through the material together. This one is always going to be challenged and banned, which it bothers me. First of all, I love the format of it because it's in a comic book style format, which makes it really accessible and easy for kids to follow. But it bothers my soul so much that this book is always banned and challenged because of the fact that it covers topics and information that are so vital to youth. And if you go on Goodreads, you can see so many reviews of people talking about, I wish I would have had this book growing up. Imagine having a book where someone is telling you that if someone touches you without your permission, it is inappropriate and it is okay to say something. It is okay to feel like, you know, this person should not be doing that. Having the words and the language in order to be able to defend yourself and stick up for yourself. And a lot of us did not have that growing up. And so when I see a whole generation of kids who are having these materials come out, I feel so happy for them, because it leads to a better group or a better generation that's better able to understand, especially nowadays, y'all. Consent is a huge thing, and I'm glad it's getting talked about more, because I can tell you, when I was a kid growing up, no one ever taught me about consent. Nobody ever taught me about consent. You know, it used to be cute to be in school and some boy would come and grab your butt. Like, that's not okay. That's not appropriate. I remember the first time I had someone kiss me on the cheek, and it made me feel very weird. I probably was only in like 5th grade, and there was a boy who kissed me on the cheek, and it made me feel so uncomfortable, and I didn't have the words to explain like why it made me feel uncomfortable. So when I see books like this, especially Sex is a Funny Word, where it is built to give information, it's built to be accessible, it's built so that caregivers and kids can have conversations together, it stresses me out to no end, because this is you know, this is what kids need in order to better be able to protect themselves and to protect others. And it's aggravating to no end. The next one that I have on my list is one that I always find hard to talk about, because it's one that tackles difficult topics, and that is Crank by Ellen Hopkins. Ellen Hopkins is well known for her ability to tackle very, very difficult, very, very jaw-dropping, alarming topics that impact teenagers. And Crank is based on the experience that she had with her own daughter and her addiction to crystal meth. So in this book, we follow a main character who, basically, the way that the story works, it reminded me of the fact that it's so easy to slip down that slope, and that it just takes one time. And so it literally took a visit of her going to go see her father, and she becomes hooked on crystal meth. The interesting thing about the way that Ellen Hopkins writes this book is that we deal with a alter ego who's very confident, is able to make very rash decisions, is not really like uncomfortable in a lot of situations, and that is our main character on crystal meth. It's a very difficult book to read, y'all. I can't even begin to tell you how difficult this book is, because you see the main character really grapple with wanting to tell someone like, hey, I have this problem. I'm caught up in this drug that I can't get over, and I want to tell someone, but I can't because I'm so scared of how people are going to react. I don't know what to do. And as a reader, it just made me want to reach into the pages and say, like, let's go get you the help that you need. But because of the fact that talking about addiction, especially addiction amongst teenagers, is in some ways, maybe not right now, but I think not so much now, but I think, you know, when this book came out, talking about addiction amongst teenagers was taboo. And so the fact that you're seeing this play out on page, it just, y'all, I always have even a difficult time talking about it, especially knowing that, like, this is based on Ellen Hopkins' own experience. This is a trilogy. It's called the Crank trilogy. So there's 3 books in it in which we continue to follow the main character as she continues to spiral into her addiction and what ends up happening to her and what happens when her family finds out. I don't recommend walking into this one lightly. Definitely take the time to look up the content warnings for this one because they are there and they're pretty intense. Next one that I have on this list is a picture book that was actually published in 1989. Some of these books I keep like, oh my goodness, like these books are really like they're older, and I keep getting shocked about how old these books are. Like when I read Heather Has Two Mommies, I did not realize that it was originally published in 1989, and it literally is about a little girl named Heather who has 2 mommies, and her teacher helps the class understand that all families are different. No families look alike, and the most important thing about a family is that there's love in that family. It doesn't matter what they look like on the outside. This book has been through the ringer since it first got published, y'all. Like this book is constantly getting pulled off of shelves. People are constantly complaining about it, but once again I go back to that whole question of this is an empathy building type of book here, where we're teaching kids that if you have a classmate or a peer who comes in and their family structure is not like yours, it's fine. Everyone's families are different. As long as there's love between that family, then nothing else in the world should matter. And so this book is kind of like that introductory piece to family structure. It doesn't necessarily go into any detail, although for the 10th anniversary edition, they did rework a section that dealt with artificial insemination. So they took that out to make it more accessible for younger kids. So there's nothing that is explicit about this book at all. It literally is just talking about how families look different. But God forbid we teach our kids that being different is okay. Like there's nothing wrong with a family that looks different. The next one that I have here is All Boys Aren't Blue by George M. Johnson. George M. Johnson was actually chosen as the chair for this year's Banned Books Week. So I'm really excited for them. George really has been through the ringer the past couple of years with this book specifically. This book has come up a lot. I've seen school boards debate about it. I've seen parents say some really nasty things about this book and about George. I've actually watched videos where parents have taken passages out of this book out of context and have read them during school board or PTA meetings. It is absolutely disgusting, and it is heart-wrenching to know that this is George's lived experience. They put so much into this book about their intersecting identities of being Black and queer. And it is so vital for people to understand the concept of intersectionality, and that there is a unique experience for those who have intersecting identities. And George talks heavily about that throughout the course of this book. What bothers me so much it irks me is, how do you censor someone's lived experience? How do you tell someone you can't talk about your life? You don't have a right to talk about what you've been through. You don't have a right to talk about your identity. It just literally bothers me about that. And everything that parents and school board and politicians pull from this book is so out of context, and they refuse to look at the bigger picture of what George was attempting to do with this book. If you haven't read this, please read it. I did a review video talking about intersectionality in this and also hood feminism. I will link that up in the card symbol above. I did it in like 2020, so it was 2 years ago. And please forgive me, this video was shot before I found out that George used they, them pronouns. So I do refer to pronouns that they no longer use. This was before George made it known that they use they, them pronouns. So just please be aware of that when you are watching that video. But I highly recommend watching it to get a better grasp on how important the concept of intersectionality is for a lot of individuals. George also has another book that was recently released that I have on my shelf over there. So make sure you check out both of their books. The next one that I have here is Monday's Not Coming. This is by Tiffany D. Jackson. Clearly, a lot of people are familiar with this book on BookTube. People have their feelings about Tiffany D. Jackson, which I completely understand. This is a book that has definitely also been getting a lot of like traction in terms of being challenged and banned. I have also seen school board members and parents read this at school board meetings and take passages out of this book completely out of context. This is one that is difficult to really talk about because you don't want to give too much away, but it is about two characters, Claudia and Monday. Claudia and Monday are really close. They're best friends, and one day Monday goes missing. She never turns up to school, and Claudia is distraught and she can't figure out where Monday is, and no one wants to tell her where Monday is. No one seems to care that Monday has gone missing. So this is a little bit of commentary about the plight of missing Black girls, and it's gut-wrenching. This is a very gut-wrenching book. It is not an easy book to read. Once again, this one is lit up with content warnings. I highly recommend looking them up before you dive into it. There's something that I love about this book, and it is Jackson's play with color. When you read the book, you'll understand what I'm talking about, but there's this literal like usage of color when we're reading things from the perspective of Claudia. She uses color to kind of identify and describe people, and I thought that that was a very unique element of this book. But when you get to the end of it, I promise you it's not what you're expecting, and so be prepared. Have some tissues ready to go. And the last one that I have on this list, which I was surprised to find out that this one was on the list for banned and challenged books. It doesn't necessarily have to be on the top. I was looking at a list of books that just have been banned and challenged over over decades, and this is Like Water for Chocolate, a novel in monthly installments, recipes, romances, and home remedies. And this is one that I have read, I think, twice. I think the first time I read this might have been in high school, and it is good. The narrator is telling the story of their great aunt Tita, and Tita is the youngest of her mother's children, and she literally has this kind of epic birth where she forces her mom into early labor, and she's born in the kitchen amongst all of these spices and everything. Now in this book, it's family tradition that the youngest girl in the family is not allowed to marry, and they have to take care of the mother, and so her mother refuses to make an exception for Tita, even though she's found a young man that she really likes, and instead her mother makes her sister marry him. And so Tita is completely heartbroken over that situation, and she has to bake the wedding cake, and she's crying and just heartbroken as she's making the cake, and people don't realize that it has a greater impact than what they anticipate when the guests end up eating the cake. Completely and totally fascinating story. Recipes are at the beginning of every single chapter. This is one that I cannot wait to pick up and reread sometime soon. All right, y'all, so those are some banned books that I think you should definitely check out. So those are books that are across a variety of age groups, genres, formats, fiction, nonfiction. I absolutely adore all of those. There are so many lists out there that talk about books that have been banned and challenged. I definitely recommend reading them. Remember that the whole point is not just increasing readership, but acknowledging the fact that our accessibility as adults makes it easier for us to get to these books, whereas our youth are struggling to get to them. I hope that everybody is kind of understanding the impact that that's going to have on our kids for the future, but I will make sure I link all of the relevant information below. That's from ALA so that you can check it out. Remember to continue to keep celebrating Banned Books Week this week, and if you like this video, give it a thumbs up. If you want to see more content from me, click the subscribe button, hit the bell for notification. All of the links for my social media and ways to support the channel will be down in the description box below, and I'll be back with another video soon.